Hello, everyone, and welcome to the leadership podcast called My Great Aunt EDNA, the leadership show that focuses on excellence, doing things the right way, no shortcuts, and accountability. I'm your host, Mac McNeil, and today we kick off season 2 with an extremely special guest. So today I have with me retired Lieutenant Colonel Merryl Tengesdal, and she happens to be the only Black woman and first woman, period, to pilot the U-2 spy plane. And so, with that, I want to say, Merrill, thank you for joining the show. And I'll turn it over to you. Just let the listeners know who you are and who we're talking to today.
All right, so first, I'm a retired colonel.
Oh, sorry about that. I like it. Okay. Full bird.
Yes, so you know, retired colonel from the Air Force, spent 23 years, 4 months, 20 days in the military, retired. I have Navy experience as well as Air Force experience, so I can speak multiple languages, military languages, with a little joint staff sprinkled in. I started out flying. I was an aviator by trade in both services. I started out flying the SH-60 Bravo, which was my first fleet aircraft in late 90s to 2000s. Then I went over to be a T6 and T-34 instructor at Corpus Christi. And then I went to Randolph Air Force Base. And then I followed on to Moody Air Force Base as a Navy instructor flying with Navy and Air Force students. And then in 2004, I made the transition to go over from, an instructor in fixed wing to flying the U-2 spy plane in 2004. And I switched over to the Air Force at that time and stayed in that community and did a host of, leadership jobs with my last job culminating out of retirement in at the Pentagon working as the director of inspections for the inspector general.
Outstanding. That resume is amazing. It almost doesn't sound real, but I know I'm talking to you. I've seen the pictures. I've seen some of your other interviews. It's amazing to have you on the show. And we have some similarities. I didn't share this with you, but one, we come from the same era, born in the same year. But I had aspirations to be a pilot too. So I have to ask you this question. I remember when Top Gun came out. I was in Germany at the time. My father was in the army, and I'm watching Top Gun. Was that part of your inspiration when you saw the fighter jets in that movie to want to go in that direction, or was that something that you've always wanted to do?
So I've always wanted to be an astronaut since I was 7 years old. So
Okay.
I watched a lot. Yeah, 7 years old. I watched a lot of science fiction, in particular Star Trek. And from Star Trek, I said I want to boldly go and explore space, be like the crew of the Enterprise, and go. And from there, I figured out this plan, this journey that I wanted to do. I knew I was going to go to school. I knew I was going to do something in math and science, and I knew I was going to fly. So Top Gun was fun. I mean, everyone, I think Top Gun at that time when it came out, everyone wanted to fly jets. Like I wanted to fly, but I was like, jets are cool. Like the type that you wanted to fly was
Yeah.
cool. But I've always wanted to fly since I was 7 years old. It was all about exploring and taking on the challenge and having these skill sets ready to face anything that gets thrown at me. Because if you're exploring space, it's as we know, it's infinite, right? So it's billions of stars. Maybe some are inhabited, some are not. But whatever you're going to meet in life, you got to be ready. So how do you get ready? You just prepare and prepare in your life's journey.
That is amazing. It also it sparks questions in my mind anyway. A 7-year-old young Black girl. Your upbringing, your environment. Can you speak a little bit about that, like how you were nurtured to get to the point where you truly believe that this is something that's possible?
Well, I was born and raised in the Bronx. So single parent household by the age of 7. So it was just me and my mom the entire time. And so for me, nurture. My mom didn't say I couldn't do anything, but I
Mhm.
will tell you, in that environment, being born in the early 70s, there were definitely gender roles at the time. Like, so I talk about that on my Instagram post, my one of my most recent ones back in the days. The girls can be like they call it airline hostess, nurse.
Yeah.
secretary, um, I forgot what else. Very, very feminine roles, which there's nothing wrong. Oh, teacher, which
Yeah.
teachers are amazing. Like teachers are, man, they go through a lot right now. So,
Yeah.
give them a raise, anyone listening who has the power to do that. But and then on the boys' side, it was like fireman, baseball player, policeman, astronaut, all these things. And I'm like, why does the boys' side seem so much more interesting than the girls? So, to want to do that, I think my mom was like, ah, it'll just be a phase, it'll just be a phase.
Mhm.
Uh, she didn't really say anything, but she never said I couldn't do it. So I just knew for myself that this was I was like, oh, I want to do that. Okay, no problem. 7 years old, just all right, let's do this framework. We got a couple of goals in line. All right, let's get to work. And that's what I did. I mean, I was a kid,
Mhm.
but I always had in the back of my mind, okay, when I go to school, I'm gonna be focus more attention on math and science and anything else that I'm good at. And that's what I did.
So I love that. It didn't sound like your mother was limiting at all. Like I love that, and especially as a single mother in New York and the Bronx, and I have some friends from the Bronx. It's really, hardcore, gritty kind of, especially back in the '70s. The mentality. So I love that your mother didn't put any barriers in front of you. And I was reading something else that you wrote previously, and it was something that happened in the third grade. I'm not going to tell the story, but I think you know where I'm going with that. So
Right.
can you speak to that as well?
Yeah, so going in the third grade, you have these. So I love playing sports.
Mhm.
Like if you put a GI Joe or Barbie doll in front of me, I am throwing the Barbie doll in the garbage. Like it ain't like there's no like back in the day, GI Joe had the kung fu grip, the
Yeah.
appendages bent. It was all cool. Barbie's straight. Like you could change an outfit, different colors. I did not care. Like I wanted to be able to. I remember I used to have this like evil Knievel um toy where you can wind up and they would go on a bike and jump stuff. Like that was the best thing. But you give me a bunch of doll dresses, you know, I might sell secrets if you try to torture me with that because it's so painful. It's so painful. So for me, growing up at that time, kids are mean. Kids are always mean. Kids will forever be me. So I got made fun of a lot. I was called a tomboy. Like
Mhm.
you want to be a guy, you want to be a boy. I'm like, nah, I'm happy. I just let me do me. And I think you get made fun of when you're 5, 6, 7, 8. By the time I was in third grade, I had enough. Like I was just tired. I was tired of the people tired of the kids in my building. I just wanted to just do sports and run around with the guys and run in the sandbox and swing on ropes and do things. And so I had this book where you could put report cards in, and on the back of it, it had those lists. What do you want to be when you grow up? Uh,
Mhm.
for the boys, this, or for the girls, that. And then there was this other one that just had other. And by third grade, after all you know, the ridicule and everything, I was just like, I just checked that and
Mhm.
I put myself and then I signed it. And I look back on that because when I look back on that now as someone who's much older, you're 5 decades later, I'm like, dang, I was just fed up. Like I was just a kid that was fed up and
Yep.
wanted just to be who I was and just leave me alone. And I think nowadays, especially with social media, that's very hard to do. People you don't even know hiding behind a keyboard
Yep.
being a keyboard warrior coming in, maybe they come in with some baggage or something that happened, they want to take it out on someone else. um I had kids that did this to my face all the time, and
Yeah.
so yeah, it just makes you fed up. But I think for me it was like it was more fuel for the fire for me instead of something that festered inside of me that I was going to destroy the world. I was
Mhm.
like, man, I'm going to use this fuel and I'm going to show them. I'm going to show these people. I'm going to show everybody that they're wrong. So there's definitely ways you can take. Um, I don't know if it's ridicule, rejection, whatever it is. You can take that and make it a very negative experience and let it destroy you,
Hmm.
or you can take that and you can actually turn that into some type of fuel. So when things get tough, you think of that one kid that says something to you, "Oh, you look like a boy," and you're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
oh, hell no," and you just
Yeah.
go. Yeah, so those are the choices, and I think nowadays a lot of kids will go for the former and
Hmm.
let it eat them alive and change them into something and cause despair and all this stuff internal with them. But just to let them know, it's been going on for a long time, but
Yeah.
you have a choice on how you're going to deal with that. It's okay to be emotional about it. Believe me, I cried a
Hmm.
lot. My mom was like, "Sticks and stones will break your bones." Just tell him that. And I'm like, "Mom, why am I going to tell him that? They don't care about that. You gonna give me a stick? No, not gonna do." But you just learn. I could have let that happen,
Yeah.
but just something inside me was like, "Man, I'm gonna show you. Like you gonna get up and recognize." And fast forward to now, people recognize.
Oh, most definitely. Tell you right now, I recognize, that's why we're talking today. But I love what you were just saying there. I did a piece on it called "What is the net worth of your anger?" And it's exactly what you're talking about. Like anger is not a bad thing.
No,
What's the net worth? What's the result of you being angry or, feeling rejected or whatever. So you're the quintessential example of how to turn that into a positive outcome. So I love that piece. Love that.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Anger is not a good thing. It's just how you use it. And as a parent, like I try to teach my kids that, like,
Mhm.
there's emotions are valid, but the way
Yeah.
you behave, there are times when it is not appropriate at all.
Yep.
So you got to take that and you got to chat. That's that's where the I almost want to say that's where a lot of the power comes from.
Mhm.
Being able to challenge that anger, that beast, that whatever, and focus it into something. It has a lot of power to it. You just can't let it consume you.
Yep, absolutely. So thank you for that. I'm going to change gears here a little bit and jump back into your military career. So I understand you flew helicopters
I did.
before you actually got into the jet. So tell us a little bit about that story.
So, when I was in the Navy, I went to flight school like everyone else. There was a jet cutoff. They called it a Navy standard score. I
Mhm.
missed it by zero point 0.9 points, so I knew I wasn't going to get jets.
Yeah.
Even though I was a really good student, you're competing against your peers. And some of these, I had 0 flight hours coming into the military. Some of them had more. Some of them, I don't know, maybe more talented. I don't know. I can only tell you that I was pretty daggone good as a flight student with no flight time, and that's based off the words of my instructor.
Yeah.
And so, didn't get that, but I got helicopters, and I love them. I got to fly. I came out. I think I was number two in my graduating class for helicopter training, and I got SH-60 Bravos on the East Coast. And 60 Bravos, they have sonar buoys, they have torpedoes, they have at that time we had Penguin missile, Hellfire missile, we have FLIR, we do search and rescue, we do all these things. We could do over the horizon targeting, communications relay, all these things, and I'm like, yeah, this is bomb. You go, you're not going, as we say, mock snot, but you're flying over a tree line or you're flying over the water at 100 knots, 150 knots. It's amazing. It's really cool. So, um, my first deployment, 6-month deployment, was on a ship called the USS Normandy CG-60. So it was a cruiser. We were with the carrier,
Mhm.
and man, I got to see some phenomenal. I got to do some phenomenal flight operations. So yeah, I mean, jets wasn't my first choice, but
Yeah.
I still knew I could become an astronaut if I continued on the helicopter tour. I just had to adjust my my immediate goals to get to that long-term goal.
Yeah, that's another powerful segment of your life that I think a lot of people can learn from, whether it's leadership or just, in person in general, like not getting what you wanted or you thought you wanted initially, and then how it impacted you and just made you better, well-rounded overall. So I find that also interesting that you kept going, you kept pushing. A lot of people will quit, but you kept pushing to get to where you ultimately wanted to be in that journey.
Oh, yeah, a lot of people. So, you know, it's all great. You could be a great character when everything's going for you, but when things don't go well, that's where the true test begins. And I tell people, when you don't, if you're on this journey, you don't get what you want. I say you have up to 24 hours to mourn the loss of whatever you didn't get.
Yeah.
And then it's back to, all right, now it's back to, let's think about why this happened. Is it something in my control, out of my control? If it was in my control, what can I do next time to not have this happen again? If it's outside my control, then there's no need sweating that, because
Mm.
sometimes there's influence that are just outside of your control. Things happen for a reason. Okay, I did everything I possibly could. Okay, now what is the next step? Because the answer is, it's not to stop. It's not to um, you might have to take a pause and recalculate how you're going to do it, but it's not to just stop where you are and then just complain about the entire time. No, keep moving. The growth is in that struggle. The real journey is in that struggle and how you navigate it and what path you're going to forge forward and how that's going to get you to your destination and how it looks to other people who are behind you. Like, there there are times where um if you stop, then someone else may give up and
Mhm.
say, "Man, it's much better than me. I'm not going to do it." And that's really not the answer either. So, maybe it's just not about you the whole time. Maybe it's about people coming up behind you and what you could do and what you can show people. So that's, you know, for me, at that moment when I didn't get helicopters, yeah, I was sad. Like, I mean, when I didn't get jets, and I
Yeah.
got helicopters, I was sad for, like, I will tell you, it was a hot minute. Like, okay, a couple of hours went by, and I
Yeah.
sat and I thought about it, and I was like, "Ah, but I can go this way. I'm not gonna go H3s. I'll go H60s. I'm not." Yeah, I was like, "I got this. This will be fun."
Love it. Love it. So how'd you make the transition from helicopters to jets?
So the transition. So there are two stories. My husband said he put that in my ear. He's now my husband. At that time we were dating.
Yeah.
He's in the
Yeah.
Navy reserves, and I was in the Navy at the time, and he was like, "Look at you twos," and I'm like, "I don't remember this conversation, but we joke about it now."
Yeah.
There was actually my boss at the time who was in the Air Force, because I did my last job at Moody Air Force Base. I was a flight instructor. So my boss at the time, Mike Dog Senna, he was like, "Merrill, you need to come to the Air Force, fly F-117s, U-2s, B-2s, B-52s." They had all these programs where you can have what they call inter-service transfers. So I looked into it. And in the military, you can't do anything in life without a military instruction, whether
Yes.
it's an AFI, a DOD, uh, a NAV, OpNav, whatever. So sure enough, there's a way to do an inter-service transfer from the Navy to the Air Force. And then I applied using Air Force instructions to the YouTube program, simultaneously putting in a package to Beale Air Force Base to fly the U-2. The U-2 was interesting to me because high altitude aircraft, you're wearing a pressure suit, which is basically a NASA spacesuit that has been
Mhm.
modified slightly. You're going above 70,000 feet. I was going to do missions that were similar to what we did in the Navy, in terms of uh, just reconnaissance. And
Mhm.
so I was like, this would be cool. Little did I know at that time, this is 2004, so this is all before like the Kardashians and all these things that were going on where people were branding themselves in a
Right.
certain way.
Right.
So I didn't realize that the path I was taking was making me sort of unique.
Mhm.
There's not a lot of inter-service transfers that have gone over. There's a few, but there's not a lot of us. And I didn't realize going into the YouTube program, once I got accepted, that I was going to be. There were a couple of women that had been in it, starting with Troy Devine, but I didn't realize I was going to be the fifth woman. and the only Black woman. There were maybe another handful, 4 Black pilots before me, so I didn't know all this was going on. All I knew is that I wanted to be in a community where I liked the mission, I
Hmm.
liked brother and sisterhood, and I got to serve my country, and I got to go high altitude. And and it would probably look good when I applied for NASA because how many people were doing what I was doing? And
Right.
and even now, and we celebrated the 69-year history of the U-2. It was a design by Kelly Johnson in 1955, flew under a Black program with the CIA. In the 69 years, there have been to date 1,116 U-2 pilots. The U-2 is going to be decommissioned next year. According, we'll see what happens. But that's not a lot of pilots in 69 years. So um, I'm a small group of a small group of a small group. And sometimes I joke and I say, I'm just like a unicorn bouncing around doing my thing. So, in terms of what the future would be, branding, how do you set yourself apart from others? Like I've done that. And a lot of it is inadvertently until I started realizing, oh, hey, I'm doing this. The jobs I'm doing in the Air Force are setting me apart. There's not a lot of people, actually, I don't think there's any who have done what I've done, and still went from the Navy to the Air Force and made it to colonel, the rank of colonel, and then, continue on doing what I'm doing now. So I feel in my journey so far, I
Hmm.
haven't become an astronaut yet, and I say that, but in my journey so far, I've been able to set myself apart, blaze some trails that I think people behind me will see and want to do, or maybe take on part of it. But just to even know that I'm doing this and being able to talk to kids who are in underserved communities who grew up economically like me, whether you're black, white, other, I don't care, whether you're a boy or a girl, whether you look like me, like I represent what you can become your own person. So, yeah, I feel very fortunate and blessed, and it's pretty cool. So I really gave you a big answer in that.
But that's exactly where I was going anyway. So you just went to where I was going to go, because I know that you are a brand. I see your shirt Shatter the Sky. I know, I've seen your newsletter. You are a brand. You're one of one. You're in the Women in Aviation Hall of Fame. I
Yeah.
believe it's an international one. So I'm just, pleased to have you on the show. But before we wrap up and everything, and of course, I'd love to have another conversation with you because I have so many questions for you. You can't do it in one segment, but is there anything you would like the audience to know about some of your next steps and what you're doing?
So some of my next steps. A couple of months ago, I videoed a podcast with another unique individual trailblazer. Her name is Caroline Jensen. She goes by Blaze. She was a Thunderbird pilot, number three in the lineup of Thunderbird pilots, and phenomenal woman. We come from totally opposite spectrum. She's from the countryside of Wisconsin, as I joke about, and I'm, the urbanite from the Bronx, like down and dirty. And we sit together and we have eight. We're gonna have 8 or 9 episodes as we talk about aviation, military aviation leadership, motherhood. She's a single parent of a 15-year-old. So we have, even though we come from these diverse backgrounds, like our philosophies are interesting in how we see the world, and there's a lot more similarities than you would think from two people if you stay to a basic core foundation. So it's just nice to meet people who may not look like you but still walk in the same direction as you, and we're going to tackle that. And I think it was just great. We're gonna air that podcast sometime at the end of this year, next year, um in time for the Women in Aviation event in 2025. So that's one of the projects that is underway. The other one is, yeah, more merch. I'm working on another project that's based off my book Shatter the Sky. We're going to the stratosphere. Taught me about self-worth, sacrifice, and discipline. You can get it on Amazon, you can get the audiobook, but I'm going to take some of those stories and we're going to make it more visual,
Mhm.
visually stunning for those who love graphic novels and like reading stuff. So be prepared. I'm working right now with an artist who's um, he's off the chain. So we're in the works of that. So that's going to be coming here within the next couple of months. Other than that, I'm doing podcasts with great individuals, and I'm just out there talking on the circuit. So if you want to book me for a speaking engagement through Harry Walker Speaking Agency, um, Haley is my agent. So you can get all of that on my website at merrilltengesdal.com.
Well, thank you, Colonel Tengesdal, for being a guest on My Great Aunt Edna, and you're actually kicking off our second season. So, everyone, we're going to put her information up on the screen for you. And if you're listening by audio, again, just rewind. You've heard her website there to get in touch with her. And with that, I just want to thank all the listeners out there. Please like and subscribe to this channel, mygreatauntedna.com. You can get all the information there. And Colonel Tengesdal, you have a great rest of your day. Continue to shatter the sky, and thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be on, and we'll do this again.
Thank you.